Window cleaners. What is the weirdest thing you have seen while cleaning windows? Story 1. I am a consulting engineer working in building science and structural restoration. A few years back, I was on a project in Toronto inspecting the exterior of a 38-story high-rise. It was just me and two contractors on a swing stage, basically a big window washing platform, slowly making our way down the building to review glazing and sealant work. Now, when you're working on tall buildings like this, people don't always expect someone to be outside their windows, and every now and then we see things we shouldn't. We're trained to look away, keep it professional, and move on. On this particular day, we came across a window where someone was clearly under the impression they had total privacy. Let's just say she was taking care of some personal grooming. Being professionals, we immediately looked away, so far away, in fact, that we didn't see the metal lip of the next level down. Our swing stage bumped it, tilted awkwardly, then swung back like a pendulum, and bam! All three of us slammed right into this poor woman's window. It didn't break, but the noise was loud enough to scare the life out of her and us. I am talking full jump scare energy on both sides of the glass. We awkwardly shuffled down past the window as fast as the controls would allow, trying not to make eye contact. Easily one of the top 5 most mortifying work moments of my career, and probably number 1 for her. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button, and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. The company I used to work for specialized in residential window cleaning, so going into people's houses was very common. I have quite a few stories, but here are some of the more memorable ones. One time, I got a job for a full-service cleaning at a house. Usually we work in pairs, one guy handles the interior while the other does the exterior. I was the lead on this job, and the exterior is usually more difficult, so I told my partner to go ahead and get started on the inside while I got started on the outside. Little did I know, the house belonged to a widowed older gentleman, probably in his 80s, who was getting the place ready to put on the market. About halfway through the job, there was a problem with a window on the outside that I needed to fix from the inside. When I entered the house, I was instantly blasted with the pure smell of ammonia and what can only be described as the worst combination of animal crap and piss. It must have been like that for years. After nearly throwing up, I spotted, no exaggeration, a literal small mountain of cat crap next to the front door. The litter box was stacked beyond its capacity. It was insane to see. I quickly looked around and saw dog crap everywhere, pee stains all over. I was in shock. The old man came out to greet me, smiling, saying, "Hey there, your partner got started upstairs," like nothing was wrong. When I found my partner upstairs, he had a towel wrapped around his face and was just shaking his head. The entire house was covered in cat piss and dog crap in every room. It was disgusting. The worst part was a group of young girls hired to pack up his furniture and dishes. I could see them gagging every few seconds. Also, the old man's brother was there to help him pack, and he was sitting on the piss and crap-stained couch with his shoes off, like everything was fine. I am pretty sure the girls left after about 20 minutes because they stepped outside, and I didn't see them for the rest of the job. Another time, I had this older woman who used our company quite regularly, and she loved me and always requested me. Maybe the 5th or 6th time I came, one of her daughters was there who I had never met. When it was time for me to do the windows in her room, the customer yelled upstairs to ask if it was okay for the window guy to come in and clean, and we both heard, "Yeah, that's fine." When I got there and knocked, she was standing there in just her inners. She was in her late 20s. She smiled at me and said, "Hi, I will be leaving soon." I was a bit flabbergasted because she was gorgeous. I can't remember exactly what I said. I just muttered something and awkwardly started cleaning her window. She got dressed and left within a few seconds, and that was it. Another time, there were some very nice high-rise luxury apartments near the office that we used to do quite often, interior only. This lady must have forgotten about the appointment. When I knocked on the door, she greeted me in a bathrobe, visibly drowsy and confused. I explained I was there to clean her windows for the appointment she scheduled. After some confusing discussion, she allowed me to begin and shortly passed out in her bed without me realizing. When I finished, I found her asleep in her bedroom. I tried to politely wake her as best I could without crossing any boundaries to get the payment, but she was so out of it I ended up just leaving. She called the office shortly afterward, asking if we were still coming for the appointment. Edit. One more story. The way we clean the windows is with what's called deionized water. It's basically a fancy term for pure filtered water. You can rinse a window with this water, and it doesn't leave any residue spots when it dries, making the job really easy. Anyway, a downfall of this technique is that it uses quite a bit of water. At this certain time in this certain state, there was a major drought. Our water filtration systems have runoff water that doesn't get pressurized. It's just tap water that didn't get a chance to go into the filter since everything is pressurized. This customer had a number of solar panels that she'd had cleaned by us last time and got the same service this time. When I got up to the solar panels, I noticed we were charging her for about 20 panels, but there were 50+ panels on her roof. I went to talk to her about it, and she adamantly claimed we did them all last time. Sigh, whatever. I wasn't in the mood to argue with this lady. I just did the panels, even though it should have been about $100 more. While doing the panels, I spotted her and her son erratically trying to scoop up the water runoff from the system into buckets. I climbed down from the roof and asked if everything was okay. She proceeded to break down in tears about wasting water. I had to console her for about 20 minutes, telling her we'd be done soon and that next time she could request everything be done by hand to save water, etc. An hour later, I finished the panels and the service and went to get payment. Something happened, I can't exactly remember, but she made a remark about how expensive everything was, and I kind of snapped on the inside. In retrospect, this was my bad, and I said something along the lines of how she only got charged 25 cents per solar panel, so it was actually a good deal. She then proceeded to have a total meltdown, yelling and berating me about everything and anything. She went way over the line and got very personal. Her son stood there silent, and after a few minutes of her going on like that, she demanded that her son, who was much younger and smaller than me, remove me from the house. I just looked at him, shook my head, and made my way toward the door. The whole time I was trying to stay cool and didn't say any personal remarks back to her. I am standing outside the door and she says something like how ridiculous this is. I just look her in the eye and say, "Yes, it is." She slams the door in my face. Bipolar to the max. I do admit I snapped for a second and made a little remark about the solar panels I probably shouldn't have. She got $500 worth of services for free that day, so I guess she won. Story 3. I only did the job for about 8 or 9 months, but saw 2 unexpected things. The first time I got to the top of the ladder and saw a guy I know is a priest enjoying some corn. I scurried back down the ladder, hoping he would not hear me, and then slowly went back up. He had obviously heard me, because when I got back to the window, he was standing up reading a Bible. The other time, I got to the top of the ladder and saw a woman in her 80s sitting on her bed completely bare. I was sure she saw me, so I gave her a few minutes before going back to the window. When I got there, she was sitting in exactly the same place, still bare, smiling at me. I got a job in an office soon after. Story 4. My dad has been a roofer since he was 15. One day, he took me to work with him to double-check a job his guys had recently done. He put up the ladder, secured it, and said I could come up. I am scared of heights, but it was only 3 stories, so up I went. Dad was already up there. As I climbed carefully, I passed a window. Sitting in front of a vanity mirror was a young girl, maybe 16. She was cutting her hair with scissors in a strange, aggressive way, making angry faces in the mirror. I just stood there, staring at the scene. Her hair was cut in choppy bits above her chin. She put the scissors down, stared into the mirror, and started laughing, a deep, guttural laugh, like a young girl imitating a manic man. It all took less than a minute. My dad called me, and I looked up at him. Then back at the window, she was staring right at me. I scurried up the ladder and avoided the mom when she came out later. I think I was more embarrassed than anything. Story 5. I was 17 at the time, running a swing stage on a large building while caulking. There was an elderly lady who lived on the 5th floor who I'd have short conversations with now and then. She was very nice and bought us lunch once a month. Her husband had died 30 years earlier, leaving her a pile of money. This lady had been a beautiful woman in her day, with massive chesticles but couldn't have children. Well, it was 11 a.m., and I was heading up to the 6th floor when none other than this elderly lady came running to the window. Her deflated chesticles just flapped completely bare, with the biggest smile on her face, waving at me. I kept going as if I didn't see it. The next day, I saw her, and my heart kind of dropped, thinking she knew I saw her. She came over to us and said, "I was waving at you in the window yesterday, but you must not have seen me. Be sure to look for me next time you go past." It's common knowledge among the maintenance guys that she'll answer the door all bare, quote-unquote, forgetting she doesn't have clothes on. Another time, while working on a fraternity building, we saw a girl who'd left the building wearing nothing but a shirt a few times. Later, she was playing ski poling with 5 guys on the pool table on the 3rd floor. She saw us at the window and waved. Later, she left a note on our lift that said, "I know you've already seen how bored I was with a weak team of boys, so maybe you men can work together and help a girl in need." She was totally crazy. Story 6. Window cleaner here. I was up on a ladder at an older single woman's house, cleaning her bedroom window. She was just getting out of the shower, fully bare, bent over putting on her dress, and happened to turn around to find me washing the window. She was in her early 50s and extremely good-looking for her age. When she turned around and stood up, I saw her chesticles, which was fake but very nice. She didn't freak out but closed her blinds. When I finished the job, I knocked on the door to give her the bill. All she said was, "I hope you enjoyed what you saw," with a little devious smile. I replied, "Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much," took the check, and went on my way. I do her house every 6 months now, and we know each other on a first-name basis. Story 7. Not me, but my friend's stepdad. When he was 22, before he got married, he used to clean windows in New York apartments. One time, he was driving up the rope platform to the 8th floor and saw a dad, probably in his 30s, and his daughter. He thinks so, at least. She looked about 18 to him. They were doing things while listening to S-Bomb at full volume. Luckily, they didn't notice him, because it was kind of awkward to just stare. So he skipped that room and came back an hour later, finding the girl sleeping bare on the floor, covered in friction fixer. Sorry if this made you uncomfortable or sick. That's just what happened. Story 8. I didn't see anything strange per se, but I did work on a few mansions and got to see the inside of the 1% homes. It was pretty intense. Huge theaters and stuff. I think the home was worth $20 million or something ridiculous. Other than that, my favorite was when cats would come up to the inside window while I was cleaning the outside. Really made my day, considering window washing is so monotonous and soul-crushing. Story 9. There was this house I used to clean. Front and back windows. They had an extension built on the side of the house and didn't want us climbing on the roof to get to the back in case we cracked any tiles. The lady who lives there, mostly in her 30s, asked if it would be possible to carry the ladder through the house and into the back the next time her windows were due to be cleaned. I agreed. 2 weeks later, I knocked after cleaning her front windows, and she answered wearing nothing but a towel. She told me she was just about to get in the shower. I asked if she wanted me to leave until next time, but she said no. Come through. So I awkwardly began maneuvering my ladder through and managed to make it into the kitchen. As I was standing there, it became painfully obvious that her kitchen layout was too small for me to get the ladder through to the back door. She started trying to help me, which, as you're probably expecting, resulted in her towel dropping. She caught it just in the nick of time before anything below the waist was revealed. To her credit, those were some good reflexes. Story 10. In college, I worked all summer on the university's window cleaning crew. The buildings were all older, so we had 2 people working the spray pole from the ground and 2 people inside with towels ready to catch any water that leaked in from the spray. Most of the dorms were empty, so that was pretty uneventful, but a number of the on-campus apartments were still occupied. One studio apartment was occupied by a hoarder. There were 3 feet of garbage with a path leading to the bed. The bed looked like someone had dumped a bucket of water on it because of how much grease and oil covered the sheets, and the smell was unreal. Another apartment made us paranoid that the owner was going to come home and off us all. I like guns, but this guy was the sketchy kind of weapons enthusiast. Soldier of Fortune magazines littered the table, along with empty 7.6 2x39 ammo boxes, and the walls were decorated with various targets. In the middle of the kitchen table was a big novelty-sized hunting knife stuck point down into the table. We made our way upstairs and found a ton of seedlings and empty containers for what I am assuming was an outdoor grow operation. All the windows were blacked out with plastic and aluminum. At that point, my coworker and I looked at each other and said, "Welp, time to get the hell out of here." We did report the hoarder to the residence admin, but we did not turn in the militant gardener. Story 11. Not a window cleaner, but my wife has a story of being on the other side of the window. It was a normal day. She got out of the shower and decided that would be the perfect time to take a nap. She lay on the bed, face down. Luckily, with her head facing away from the window, she was in her undies. A few minutes later, she realized the window was clearer. She had a bit of a panic and didn't know what to do, so she just pretended to be asleep, laying there the entire time, waiting for him to finish. No jokes, please. He did his job and left. Now my wife closes the curtains every time she takes a shower. Story 12. I saw this weird guy on the roof of the building I was cleaning, and he asked me for a lift because he had no other way to get down. While we were riding down, he saw a friend on the ground and started screaming, "Alistair, I am not a window cleaner," like 5 bloody times right next to me. He then turned to me and said, "Oh, that bloke thinks I am a bloody window cleaner." I gave him a stern look, and he visibly felt bad, telling me, "It's a noble profession. Is this as fast as this thing goes?" It was at least another painfully awkward minute before we reached the ground. Story 13. I was cleaning windows for this old couple in the apartment building where I worked. He was telling us how great it is when we come every spring. He loves when all the windows are out at once. It opens up the whole apartment, the airflow, blah blah. And not that we don't do a great job, but these windows are old, and no matter how well we clean, there's nothing quite like having nothing between you and the outside. Then he went to stick his head out to look down and squarely smacked his full face into the clean window. Story 14. At 18, I was a film office apprentice. We supplied locations to films, from large Netflix productions to small student shoots. One day, I was tasked with making sure a large shoot, a film featuring famous wrestlers, which many of you might know, was going smoothly and that the crew was following their contract on site. The location they chose was one of our best and old Art Deco building that used to be a power station years ago. It's now disused but looks absolutely fantastic, costing around €5,000 per shoot day. We knew they were going to use small firearms with quiet blank bullets because the resident bats couldn't be disturbed due to nature conservation, since the building was no longer registered as active. For old buildings like this, Owners often remove all the windows to let wildlife in, which means they don't have to pay taxes because it's no longer considered a functioning building. There were lots of windows smashed from previous troublemakers, throwing stones for fun and stuff like that. Through one of the broken windows, I saw the cast, unclothed. I tried to look away, but it scarred me for life. These were wrestlers I loved as a child, and now I have that image stuck in my mind every time I see them on TV. As I walked a little further to some other windows, there was a slight crack where I could look down and see the really well-made set. Shelves stacked high, ready to be toppled over with mock explosives, and barrels prepped to be lit. This was a one-time shot. As I leaned down to take a closer look at what was going to happen, I heard action. I assumed it would be a quiet shoot. How wrong I was. A loud crash and bang sent all the shelves toppling over, with items dressed to perfection crashing to the ground. In my utter amazement and shock, it felt like a Vietnam flashback happening for the first time in my life. Is this the moment I die? To the complete surprise of everyone on set, the sound guys heard a loud, "What the hell was that?" during the sequence. At the same time, the camera crew pointed out that a person's feet could be seen at the top of the frame, and it was too obvious to keep in the cut. It turned out to be me. I don't remember uttering those words or having my feet in view, but on playback, it was very clear to hear. I've never been more red and embarrassed in my entire life. I had a bag that day and just covered my feet as best as I could because the shoes were very noticeable. The whole set was ruined and rendered a mess on the floor for a Hollywood blockbuster to clean up, all because of 5 small words and my size 8 feet. They never found out who it was, but at least it earned our film office some extra money for additional filming days. I assume they would have just adjusted the sound levels to fix it and maybe used some special effects to hide my feet, but maybe that was more hassle than just redressing everything for another shoot. Still, it was the worst day of my life. To this day, I make sure everyone stays quiet on my own sets and ensure no feet are in view where they aren't needed, just in case karma strikes back. Story 15. I worked for a window washing company in a small town, and we were hired to clean the local gym's windows and mirrors. My coworker said she would do the outside if I cleaned the private weights room. I agreed and started cleaning. This room was just off the main area and was a bit more private. Someone had converted a corner into their own personal private zone. I spent about 4 hours scraping off a sticky mess from mirrors that had engravings of scantily clad women before deciding it was too much and quitting. I still refused to go to that gym or look the gym owner in the eye. Story 16. Not a window cleaner, but about 30 years ago when the Toronto Sky Dome was built, it was placed adjacent to a hotel. If a resident was in one of the rooms facing the stadium, they could watch the game from inside their hotel room. Some people thought the window glass was one way, that people in the stadium couldn't see into the rooms. Not true. Spectators at the game ended up seeing some other kinds of sports unexpectedly until the hotel got the message out to their customers not to bang against the windows. Story 17. Not a window cleaner, but I work on roofs. Climbing up a ladder lets you see into a lot of rooms whether you like it or not. Also, a lot of people have skylights in their bathrooms. The weirdest thing I saw was a picture hanging in a customer's bathroom. The photo was the customer, a woman, in sort of a lingerie in the bucket of a tractor, doing some sort of intimate pose. On the ground, in a cheering pose, hands up, smiling, was their child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, looking up at her. Super weird if you ask me. Story 18. Not a window cleaner, but I was at a boring industry black tie event at a posh hotel in London a few years back. I woke up very hungover on the 12th floor, stumbled to the window, and pulled open the curtains. 2 blokes were standing there, staring at my fat, unclothed self. They were on one of those tall building platform things. It took me a moment to understand what the freak was going on. I closed the curtains, moving on with my life. Story 19. I am not a window cleaner, but I worked for Paxson a long time ago, and my boss told me to go up a ladder to change light bulbs above the changing rooms. They had walls and doors, but no ceilings. I was at the top of the ladder before I looked down, and all I saw were 4 different women covering themselves and looking at me like some kind of perv. I had a toolbox and light bulbs in hand, so I was clearly working, but in that moment I yelled, "Hey, Angela, how about we sort out that light bulb issue after we close, and there are no women in the changing room who now think I am an a-hole." I did the light bulbs that night. Story 20. Not in the business anymore, but I cleaned residential and commercial. The weirdest thing I ever saw was the wife of a famous actor who had a bunch of unclothed portraits of herself around the house, doing yoga, drinking coffee, stuff like that. She was sitting on the couch the whole time we were doing the windows, like it was nothing. If she didn't care, then neither did we. Story 21. When I was about 16, I was doing window cleaning and grass cutting as a little side job for some extra money. I went to a house where a few people had just moved in, thought I'd get to them before someone else did. I knocked on the door, agreed on the price, and got to work. All was fine until I got to the last window, one of the bedrooms. 2 people, a guy and a girl, were in the process of shooting what I am assuming were powder. The girl was already out of it, and the guy was starting to nod off. He was the same guy who answered the door to me. He must have forgotten I was cleaning the windows, and maybe I interrupted him. Well, he forgot to close his blinds. But something was off. The girl was foaming at the mouth, and I'd never seen someone nod so quickly. I hadn't really seen anyone nod at all at that point. I was only 16, but the girl was foaming at the mouth. I phoned for an ambulance and later found out they had both OD deliberately. Never saw them again until about 5 years later when I ran into the girl. I asked if she remembered anything from that time. Turns out she survived it, found the light and all that, but her fella passed away that day. Something I will never forget. Scary sight to see at 16. She thanked me for saving her life and said she'll always be grateful. Edit. Just to clarify with everyone asking, no, I did not get paid. The payment was agreed for after the work was done, as I always arranged with anyone. Never had issues with it. Payment was the furthest thing from my mind that day afterward. Story 22. Not a window cleaner, but I've been spotted by one. I was sitting on my day off in my birthday suit, having a solo private session and smoking a joint, and didn't hear the back gate go. The window cleaner comes in as usual and starts to climb. I had the corno playing on at high volume since I was home alone. I saw his head poke up above the top of the net curtains and his eyes widen at me. We locked eyes for a second before I lunged for a cushion to cover myself. That's the most embarrassed I've ever been in my life. I make sure my partner pays him each time he comes to the door now, and I am much more discreet in my private time. Story 23. I used to be the janitor at a busy McDonald's next to a university campus a while back. Early in the morning, I usually cleaned the windows outside before the drive-thru got too busy. I saw some fairly strange people, but one that stuck out was a very unkempt and definitely hungover man foraging for cigarette butts in the trash and on the pavement. After he gathered a handful, he sat on the curb nearby, crushed the tiny bits of old stale tobacco out of the butts into a rolling paper, which he then licked, rolled, and asked me if I had a light. If I hadn't already quit smoking before then, that encounter would have made me do it. Story 24. This is more on the sad side. We cleaned senior homes, and in the dementia ward, there was a woman who kept asking me why they had turned the volume down in the room because she couldn't hear me. She went on for a while about that and how she disapproved of it. Eventually, she started calling me Brian and said, "Brian, it's been so long since I've seen you, you never come visit." I've got to say that was both the weirdest and most saddening thing I've ever seen. Story 25. Former window cleaner of 5 years here. The unusual things I saw on the job usually happened downtown, mostly people who were irate or under the influence. One person in particular was walking down the block with no pants on. They were overweight, so their tummy blocked their private area. Other than that, nothing too weird during my time. Story 26. Not a window cleaner, but I was the person inside. I lived in a third-floor apartment with a roommate. I had a gentleman friend I'd recently started seeing romantically come over late at night, and he ended up spending the night for the first time. We woke up that morning to some people on a ladder cleaning the gutters or something. They awkwardly tried to avoid eye contact, and I think we just ignored them, rolled over, and went back to sleep. But when they moved past my window to my roommate's room, she, curious if my gentleman caller and I had hooked up, asked the guy, "Hey, is there a guy in there?" He shifted his eyes side to side, gave a quick nod with a straight face, then got back to cleaning and got the heck out of there. The way she described it cracked me up. Story 27. Not a window washer, but once I was visiting New York with a friend. His uncle, a Broadway musician, had an apartment in Astoria that we crashed at, and as a thank you, we got him a bottle of Lagavulin. He poured us glasses, and we sat across his single long couch facing the window, drinking. Pretty quickly, we noticed a girl dancing around unclothed in the next apartment up across the street, probably filming some kind of movie with her boyfriend. This went on for a short time before they noticed us, and immediately the apartment lights went dark. In unison, we all raised our glasses of scotch to the darkened apartment. Story 28. Not really weird, but was definitely gross. I work with kids, and part of my job is cleaning, including wiping the windows. I've cleaned off so many boogers, lots of snot, sometimes blood, and a ton of sweat stains. Sometimes there's even an imprint of someone's lips on the glass. For something weird, I was once cleaning the outside of a window when a kid, probably about 6 or 7, came up to the inside of the window and started watching me. After about 2 minutes, he promptly pressed his mouth on the glass and licked the window up and down, side to side, basically everywhere. Then, for good measure, he wiped his hands on it. I had just finished cleaning the inside window. I was so mad. Story 29. When I was 19, I got a loosely supervised job cleaning for a local beer distributor. On the first day, my buddy and I started making our rounds, vacuuming, cleaning windows, that kind of stuff. As we made our way to the break room with the Kirby, we noticed on the other side of a massive conference room table about 8 kegs tapped and ready. Needless to say, the place didn't get cleaned well enough for us to do it 2 nights in a row. Story 30. I work on a small team of only women. We usually have about 3 people in the office on weekends, and we're on the 3rd floor. My colleague decided to pump breast milk in her cubicle and told us not to come over until she gave the okay, not unusual. Right as she started pumping completely uncovered, a random window cleaner descended from above, and she let out a shriek. I don't think he even noticed right away, but then we watched him quickly try to scurry away from the window. He never came back to clean those windows. Story 31. When I was 16 to 18, I worked as a window washer. We had contracts with a bunch of small businesses, coffee shops/bars. My favorite was the local Twin Peaks. Think Hooters, but with hotter girls in skimpier outfits and better food. We'd get there before it opened to customers, and the girls would always give me a burger and a beer before heading to the next spot. My boss bet me I couldn't get a date with the bartender, saying if I did, he would pay for dinner. I dated her for 4 months before I left the state. Story 32. Not a window cleaner, but once while walking my dog outside my apartment complex, I saw a lit-up wall of doors on the ground level. A very attractive girl was doing a dance for some guy on the couch. She was right in front of the door. She kept going for a while. Then the guy got up off the couch and shut the blinds, realizing anyone walking in the parking lot could easily see them. Story 33. Not a window cleaner, but a graffiti writer. We were on the roof of an abandoned factory that had a row of houses behind it. From there, you could see into a third-floor apartment kitchen. There was a man completely bare, standing at the stove cooking. Behind him stood a woman in thigh-high leather boots, holding a horsewhip. We watched for a minute or two, but nothing happened. Just cooking. Story 34. I saw my manager 3 times. First, he was walking away from his building. Must have been done with his shift. Second, when I looked up, he was walking away again, this time holding a cane. He isn't that old and doesn't usually use one, so I don't know where it came from. Third, he was walking back, this time carrying a bag. I didn't know what was inside. The weird part was seeing him walk away from his building twice, once with a cane he doesn't use and I've never seen before. Story 35. Not a window washer, but I work events at hotels. 2 stories come to mind. The first, I got off work and looked back at the hotel, which was lit up for Christmas, and saw a woman pressed up against the glass getting some action. They were only on the 3rd or 4th floor. The second was during a recorded event in one of our panoramic event rooms. In the middle of a talk, I looked up from my mixing board and saw a bare man standing in the hotel window across from us, directly between the 2 speakers. I stood up and asked the cameraman what their frame was, and fortunately, from their perspective, the speakers had blocked that particular window. Story 36. I was dog-sitting for a client in a luxury high-rise apartment building and wasn't told window cleaners came by once a week. I got out of the shower and heard my phone ringing in the living room, so I walked unclothed to get it. When I picked up the phone and turned around, I saw the window cleaner. I didn't know what to do, so I smiled and waved. He gave me a thumbs up, and I walked back to the bedroom and shut the door. Story 37. Not a window washer, but a few weeks ago, our windows were being washed. They said it would be on a different day, so I wasn't really prepared. I was holed up in my room, working from home, with my cats playing nearby. At first, I noticed the window washer using the hose to spray water in patterns and play with my cats. My blinds were about 3/4 down, and I leaned forward and peeked out, laughing. Before we made eye contact, I realized I was wearing just a shirt and undies. I immediately freaked out and hid under my blankets. He left the balcony immediately. Story 38. When I was a teenager, my mom hired an old German guy who had retired from commercial cleaning to do residential window washing. He was fun to talk to and had some cool stories. He was a German soldier during World War II. One afternoon, we were chatting, and I commented that his job as a commercial cleaner must have been interesting. I didn't really think that, but I wanted to be polite. He said it was, except now and then he'd see things he wasn't supposed to see. Like what? I asked. Too many unclothed people. Too many. He wouldn't say more, and it wasn't said in a positive way. I still wonder about that now and again. What the heck were people doing? Story 39. Toronto high-rise window cleaner here. I see as much as you'd expect, unclothed people and people doing the deed. The encounter that tops all of these moments was when we reached the top on our swing stage and saw the penthouse resident watching Korn on his huge theater screen. Then he turned to us and realized what had happened. Another weird one was when we saw a guy doing his thing while petting his dog at the same time, truly real multitasking. Story 40. So the company I work for is partnered with an apartment complex where we clean all the windows in 2 buildings each month. We got there early in the morning to take all the screens out of the windows, and apparently the manager had forgotten to send out emails telling people we'd be coming that day. I have a master key, so standard protocol is to unlock the door, knock as I enter, then yell maintenance. One apartment was particularly surprised at my entrance and quickly spun around on his couch. He asked if I could just come back later and do his windows another day. I was confused but realized why he was startled when I noticed the hoard of tissues, lotion, and pillows on the coffee table in front of him. I don't think I ever actually went back to that apartment to do his windows. Furthermore, I wouldn't know what to say to him if I did. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, Be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.